14th of November, 1948, and a news story had broken that would change the world forever as we know it. The Daily Express, the most regal publication in the UK, reports that Princess Elizabeth has given birth to a baby boy. And that baby boy is, of course, Prince Charles. But the reality is, this story was written 6 months before this page even went to print. And the reason that it was written 6 months previously is because the editors at this publication knew exactly what to cover, but there were 4 remaining facts that they needed to slot in: the baby's sex, the baby's weight, how well mother and baby were doing, and of course, where the baby was born. Let's fast forward 67 years, and we can see the same publication talking about the same thing, but this time it's for Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle has, of course, given birth to Prince Archie, and we can see the same 4 components of the story shining through. We know the sex, we know the weight, we know how well mother and baby are doing, and of course, where the prince was born. Both of those features were written 6 months in advance to when the newspaper published the front page, because this ties into a type of journalist writing called planned editorial. And that is exactly when journalists, editors all around the world know exactly what they're going to be talking about, tied into a specific date or time frame. But things are a bit different for Meghan Markle. And they're different because we live in a digital-first world. In this feature here from the Daily Express, again, you can see that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are supposedly considering the Obamas as Prince Archie's godparents. The Sun reveals that Meghan Markle is taking a relaxed approach to motherhood, simply because she was pictured with a yoga mat. A third feature here then, the USA Today reports and thanks Meghan Markle for not hiding her postpartum baby bump. Now, this is a type of journalist writing called planned reactive editorial, and it's where journalists know that they need to be talking about Meghan. She is the woman of the moment. She has brought a new heir to the throne into the world. However, they don't know what they're writing about until that morning, because a picture may break or another fact may come through that they need to cover. In a third feature then, again, sticking with the Daily Express, we can see that fans are convinced Meghan is going to have another baby in early 2020 after a massive clue drops. Now, if you read this feature, you'll understand that that massive clue is, in fact, a leading gambling company giving out a press release, emailing journalists to say that the chances of Meghan having another baby are 8 to 1. Now, journalists reported that this story is happening in the here and now. If you're a journalist or an editor, you wouldn't have known that that press release was coming into your inbox. So, after receiving the information, you go into your editorial meetings and you pitch for that story to be covered that day so that you can write about it. This is called reactive editorial because it's live, it's on the pulse of the media. The problem that we have then, as link builders, is that we are all link building in 1948. That's because most of our campaigns are tied around planned editorial. So who here is doing content-driven link building? A few hands, good, good. You're actually missing out on 66% of the link building opportunities that you could be going after because we're tying too much into this planned editorial type of journalist writing. Instead, we need to be going after planned reactive editorial and reactive editorial to get that full breadth of what we could be securing as digital PRs and link builders. Now, this is a process, and it's our approach to link building, one as content-driven marketers and digital PRs you guys should be really, really familiar with. Stage 1, we have ideation. Stage 2, we have production. We go through into outreach, and then finally reporting. So this process you may do 2, 3, 4 times throughout a year for your content-driven link building campaigns. And there's nothing wrong with it. We do content-driven link building campaigns around planned editorial, because the most successful planned editorial campaigns are based on insight. Insight is defined as to gain a deep and accurate understanding of someone or something. So as marketers, we are trying to gain an understanding of the brand's audiences that we work with and the journalist audiences that we are pitching these content-driven campaigns into. Starting with insight then, we found this research. 37% of millennials have had their holiday destination influenced by social media. And I'm definitely guilty of this as well. Just take a look at Instagram. You can see these golden sands and rolling beaches, crystal clear blue waters. And I don't know about you guys, but of course I want to go and book a holiday. So this put the wheels in motion back at Era Digital. And we created this campaign as a result. We'd combined that insight with those images to come up with the most popular beaches according to Instagram. It's a relatively simplistic campaign in the sense that we just took a list of beaches off TripAdvisor that were coming out as 5-star rated, plugged them into Instagram, got our data set that gave us a ranking, created an interactive map. But the most important thing came down to the launch because we really wanted to tie it into planned editorial journalist writing. And that's exactly what we did. We launched this in the run-up to National Beach Day because we knew journalists were going to be talking about it. And it worked. Within 2 weeks, we'd built 66 followed links from top-tier news sites, not just in the UK, but all around the world. A second planned editorial campaign then. And I have to be really honest with you, this isn't a campaign that I particularly liked. So every single year, or every single quarter, car manufacturers reveal their sales figures. And through doing this, you can see who's coming out on top as the top-selling car manufacturers in the world. This map, though, is pretty confusing, right? It's not the easiest to read, and if I was a journalist, I might be put off by it. So it was no surprise to say it was a slow start, to say the least. But my team back at the UK was saying there's something in this. We know there is. We'll keep going and we'll keep pushing. And it was through that effort and constant pitching that when we first started to land the top-tier links, only a handful to begin with, nothing that was really going to move the boat, we noticed this headline from Car Scoops. Toyota is the best-selling car manufacturer in 49 countries around the world. Now, that on its own is pretty powerful, but let's go back to our really, really confusing map. You can't really see it, right? Take all of the other brands away, and you can see how strong the story really is. So it was that insight and that angle that we pushed, and we pushed it as hard as we possibly could. And 4 weeks after launching the campaign and stumbling across that insight, we'd built 92 followed links. So a third campaign then. Let's start with insight again, because we're now onto a theme. We can see that planned editorial needs insight to be a success. This is a Google Trends graph that shows the Oscars, Golden Globes, and Academy Awards spikes. And when people are interested in them, it's always towards the end of the year and in the first quarter of the following year. So there's our insight. Combine this with some favorite movie quotes in a brainstorm that we were having back in the UK. And this is my favorite movie quote. So life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And of course, Tom Hanks said that in Forrest Gump. But you combine that insight with our team's favorite movie quotes, and you get a campaign like this, the most lucrative movie quotes of all time. Not the easiest campaign to digest. We were being quite daring with our creative in this sense, but it shows very quickly just how much Tom Hanks was paid to say each word, and I think it roughly equated to around $12,000. But link building is also like a box of chocolates. And we got 0 links, because you never know what you're going to get when you launch that campaign. So link building then, those case studies have just proven that actually it can be really, really unpredictable. The first campaign, tying into planned editorial, worked really well. Client was happy. Things couldn't have gone any better. Campaign 2 was a slow start, but it took off and became a success. But campaign 3, we probably shouldn't talk about that one anymore. And that's because this is the reality of link building, right? You can see the sharp peaks and troughs just here. January was a great month for this client. We built more than 60 followed links. But let's look forward into August. pretty embarrassing month, if you don't say so. The problem then, inconsistent results will get you fired. Because guess what can give more consistent results when it comes to link building? Google Ads. You can take an investment, a chunk of money, you have your input, you put it into the program, and you get your output that has an impact on the bottom line that decision makers can see. CMOs, heads of SEO, digital marketers can very, very quickly see the positive impact that Google Ads is having with their marketing strategies. And unfortunately, we were in the position where Google Ads took our link building budget. And this is the line that was delivered from our point of contact for an e-commerce site. Unfortunately, the business is short-sighted, and we'd launched 3 campaigns with these guys that had performed really well, but the decision maker at the top of the tree needed to see results in the here and the now. Link building, because of its unpredictabilities, couldn't do that. So, as I said, Google Ads took our link building budget, even though we were getting results. And you can see the year-on-year traffic increases here from 2017 to 2018. We were doing a good job. We'd got them coverage and links on sites like this all around the world. And actually, as a team, we've built more than 7,000 pieces of coverage, including followed links, in 3 years. So it's pretty frustrating that Google Ads took my link building budget. And although we'd built 7,000 pieces of coverage, including links, I would argue and call my own team out that actually that's only 33% of what we could have done. Because we were tying too much into planned editorial, we were forgetting the other 2 types of journalist writing, our planned reactive editorial and our reactive editorial. Now, this is a challenge. Back in 2016, when I joined Era, Laura and I just here, faced the unpredictabilities of link building. With our clients, we've reported on the successes, we've reported on the failures, and we have had to learn the hard way. Fast forward 12 months, we're a team of 5, and at this point, I head it up. And yet, there was still pressure around the unpredictability that ties into link building. It wasn't really until the last kind of 12, 18 months that as a team of 15, we have started to find a way of building and delivering consistent link building results for our clients. It ultimately comes down to this. We have to stop link building like it's 1948, back when the Daily Express was reporting that Prince Charles was born, because it ties into planned editorial and planned editorial alone. Instead, we need to be more like Meghan Markle. So the solution then? Well, actually, this whole thing came about by accident, and I'm more than happy to admit that. It started with this campaign here for a leading voucher code company that we work with. We used World Health Organization to create this interactive map that essentially plotted the top 10 booziest countries around the world, according to the alcohol consumption per capita consumed. Now, we launched this in January, because it's dry January, right? But I don't know about you guys, January is the time where I'm most likely to go for a glass of wine after work. I am tired after long days, the commute is long, and actually, trying to be fit and healthy after Christmas is probably something that's not that appealing. So this launch here then, it tied into planned editorial types of journalist writing, because we knew journalists were going to be covering alcohol as a topic. We knew they were going to be writing about feeling fit after a heavy festive season. And again, it worked. It was a campaign that was built around insight, and we built 35 followed links off our first launch. Now, most of us in this room and in the industry might have stopped there because the campaign was a success. It had hit its KPIs. However, I'm a traditional PR, and I have an always-on mentality. Many people in my team also have a traditional PR background, and again, our brains are ticking, constantly trying to find the next media or link-building opportunity. And the next one then was around St. Patrick's Day. Again, every single year we know journalists are writing about it, but we never really know what they're going to be talking about until that kind of 2-3 weeks before. So you guys have probably guessed by my name, I have an Irish background, and as someone who has lots of family in Ireland, I was pretty disappointed to know that Ireland didn't even make the top 20 booziest countries in the whole world. Now, their reputation, you'd probably think they're in the top 10. We took this angle out to the press, and specifically the Irish press, saying, you know what, guys, you haven't made the top 20, and took it to the likes of Belfast Live, the Irish Independent, the Irish News. It was a hit. We relaunched the campaign in March around this new hook and secured 16 brand new features as a result of that extra push. Because that ties into planned reactive editorial. Again, as a reminder, we knew journalists were talking about it. We just had to give them the right content at the right time so they would cover our feature. Then, in June, the World Health Organization released new data. This whole campaign was built around this data set from the World Health Organization. This was unknown to us. We didn't know it was coming. Journalists didn't know it was coming. So when we found out that it was there, the new data was on the World Health Organization site, we jumped on it as quickly as we could to update that campaign. We had our designers refresh things, our developers recode, and a new campaign within 36 hours or so was up and live on the client site with that new data. We tied our new launch into reactive editorial because no one knew it was coming, and after doing a third launch for the same campaign with that updated data, we managed to secure 14 brand new links. That's 3 outreach opportunities in 6 months, when most of us as link builders might have stopped after the first one. But we didn't really know what we were doing or what the process was while we were doing it. We only really understood the success of things when we looked back over that 6-month period. And we noticed we're tied into planned editorial, planned reactive editorial, and reactive editorial. And in doing that, tying our campaign launches and relaunches into each section of journalist writing, we managed to secure 35 links from planned editorial, 16 links from planned reactive, and 14 from reactive alone. That's 68 pieces of coverage, including followed links for a client, when we might have stopped at just 35. So this was a process that worked well. It worked really well, and we knew we were onto something good because it was starting to give way for consistent link building results. We're not seeing the peaks and the troughs here in the graphs anymore. But the good thing that we could say whilst we were doing this reactive outreach is that we were actually working on creating larger campaigns for the client at the same time. And we'd partnered with this chap here, Dr. Stuart Faramond. He's a leading food scientist. And again, here you can see him testing beers. We'd stumbled on a bit of a theme with this client. The press and they were more than happy to talk about alcohol and alcohol consumption. So with this experiment, we revealed the world's gaseous beers, and Budweiser came out on top as the world's gaseous beers. This is what we call a planned editorial hero campaign then. It's the big, shiny showstopper that we're working on as an agency. But sitting underneath that, we're doing our reactive outreach to tie into that steady drumbeat of the media, and we're not forgetting that we have campaigns that we can keep pushing harder and harder to deliver consistent link building results. So finally, we've come up with a solution to this problem that we're facing. And I'm going to coin the term the digital PR newsroom. So implementing the newsroom then, how do we go about this? How do we do it? Because after all, it all happened by accident, right? Well, actually, the industry has been talking about bridging the gap between PR and SEO for years. This article here isn't necessarily new. Search Engine Watch reports that actually the collision between PR, content, and SEO, and advises on how they can make it work for their business. I've been on both sides of that fence. I started my career in a traditional PR background. I learned the hard way, how to secure coverage. I did the fancy stuff, like taking journalists out for Prosecco lunches, which actually wasn't really that fancy when they didn't give you coverage. And my most proud moment, I managed to secure a front page nib on the Daily Mirror. Fast forward to 2019 though, and instead I'm creating online assets with the team to benefit clients' SEO instead. We're taking an online digital approach. So I'm going to show you exactly how we can combine these two disciplines from everything that I've learned in my career so far in order to set up this newsroom and pave the way for consistent link building results. Now, it broadly spans across these 3 sections here. So we've got planning, resources, and people. Let's kickstart things with planning. Now, there are 4 main planning sessions for this newsroom. The first one, my favorite, it's our 8:30 Scrum meetings. So every morning at 8:30 a.m., the team and I, we huddle in our brainstorming room. We establish what's trending because we know on Twitter journalists are taking this and their trending topics as a guide and a representation of what they can write on that day. We'll look at what's in the news as well and start to understand, has another brand gone out there with a campaign that we can piggyback off and newsjack? Have we got any spokespeople, data, anything that can add to this campaign that's already snowballing in the media? Also, Reddit's come up in a couple of presentations today. We also use it in the newsroom, and we try to understand what people are talking about, what resonates with them in terms of the topics of conversation that they're either upvoting or they're casting to one side and pulling apart. And we've also got awareness days then. So today is Gummy Awareness Day. Probably not that relevant for many people in the room, but if you're working with a health brand and you've got stats around sugar, potentially you could have jumped on the back of that this morning and taken it out to press with sugar consumption or something similar like that. So the goal here with this 8:30 Scrum meeting is to find your reactive editorial opportunities, the ones that are happening in the here and now, the ones that are happening in real time that you have to jump on as quickly as you possibly can. So what does this look like in action? This is a survey and a piece of content then that we released in the summer of last year for an e-commerce site. And it's very simplistic. We revealed the ultimate book bucket list. So it was revealing the authors and the books that you should read whilst you're on holiday, that kind of thing. We launched it on the 1st of July. Roald Dahl, a national treasure, absolutely one of my favorite childhood authors. It's his birthday later in the year, and we kind of knew that something may come up with this. He also came up as one of the top 10 authors in the world. Take to Twitter before our 8:30 Scrum meeting, and we saw Roald Dahl trending. We thought this might be an opportunity for us to do something around this campaign, and we were right. It turns out that the press were talking, and they were going to talk about his birthday. So we took our stats out to the Metro and other top-tier sites in order to kind of, push that angle as hard as we could and deliver in terms of link building. And this ties into reactive editorial because it happens in the here and now. A second meeting then are 3:45 review meetings. Now, I completely understand that this is an incredibly difficult slide to digest, but I wanted to give you real insight into what this newsroom is and how we go about implementing it. This slide here reveals the actions that we have on a week-by-week basis, and also the people in the office, in my team, that are going to be jumping on things and doing it. The purpose of this meeting then is to review that document and understand who in the team is going to be doing what, and making sure that looking into the week ahead, we've got everything lined up to jump on these planned reactive campaigns. Now remember, planned reactives are ones that we can predict are coming up. So what does this look like in action? Here's a campaign that we originally launched in September 2017 for an engineering client that we work with, and it's a really simplistic GIF that reveals where the women in engineering are based around the world and which countries have the most female engineers. When we first took it out in September 2017, it was a surefire hit with the trade press. But every single year, on the 23rd of June, it's Women in Engineering Day, so that creates an opportunity for us to update the data, update the design, and go back out again to those trade publications that we knew were going to talk about that day, and that we knew were going to talk about that day, and again, it worked. You can see 3 weeks here before Women in Engineering Day, we started our outreach and to warm up the press, and we ended up getting a ton of links through, once again, by planning, researching, and making sure we had everything possibly lined up to make the most of those link building and planned reactive editorial opportunities. So our monthly editorial meetings then. So what's coming up for the month ahead? This is our master content calendar, and again, not the easiest slide to read, but I really want to give you guys insight into how things work. It shows week by week, month by month, the planned editorial campaigns we've got coming out. But if you combine this with our outreach schedule to see when those launches are going to take place, you can see gaps on this slide where there's wiggle room, and there's room that we could be plowing into doing more kind of reactive outreach for. So the goal with this session then is plan your planned editorial launches alongside your reactive outreach. So you end up with those big spikes and those big campaigns launching, those showstoppers, but you also have that steady drumbeat underneath where you're trying to maximize those link building opportunities. And finally, our quarterly reviews. Now, it all started with this guy here, and some of you may recognize his face, Mark Johnson. So he was the head of creative at Distilled and is now a freelance marketing consultant. And you can see his scribbles up here on the side. What those scribbles look like in reality is this success matrix here. And every quarter, we sit down as a team and we plan our successful versus not successful campaigns in terms of links against our complex and our not complex campaigns. Now, the sweet spot then is when your campaigns sit in that successful and not complex matrix, because they're easy to come up with, create, design, and also they're delivering well. When you start to plot your campaigns onto this metric then, you start to see trends emerging. And one of the trends that we came across is that maps are great for link building. Combine that with some insight that my boss and the author of the link building book, Paddy Mugan, went out with around this time last year for Learn Inbound. He essentially analyzed every single link and every single campaign that we had ever built or launched as an agency. And it gave way to insights like this. So this here reveals the content formats in which deliver the content formats in which deliver the highest amount of links on average. So you can see interactive campaigns there come out on top, followed by statics and GIFs. So we combined our insight from that success matrix with the insight that Paddy had given us and shared with the world at Learn Inbound, and stumbled across a real formula here and trend that worked. And these are 3 interactive maps, all of which these 3 campaigns have secured more than 250 links between them from top-tier national news sites all around the world. So, interactive maps for the win when it comes to link building. So the goal with this session here then is take your successes and learnings into the new quarter and beyond. We wouldn't have known or taken the time to go back and establish those insights had we not put any of their time aside. So resources then. You need a content bank in order to set up and implement this digital PR newsroom. And here's what a large content bank looks like for one of our clients. Now, we've been working with them for 2 years, and we've launched more than 88 link building campaigns for them. This is sitting live and is called the Discovery Hub, and it's home to all of our campaigns. I understand that not everyone is launching 88 link building campaigns, and this is probably a rarity when it comes to setting up a content bank. So, how do you set up a content bank for yourselves? Ideally, you need 5+ campaigns. They need to be evergreen, newsworthy, and attributable. So evergreen in terms of the data not going out of date like this really quickly, newsworthy in the sense that journalists are talking about it, and attributable. Have you got a spokesperson that can give comment here? Documents and frameworks then, when it comes to setting up this newsroom. So we have our editorial content calendar, and this is something that we live and die by at Era. It has every single date in which, you've got the awareness days in there that we can jump on for link building, and also days like political voting days and stuff like that, stuff that you need to give the media room to breathe in, and you shouldn't be launching your campaigns. We also have our media list, or our master media list. So when we're going after these reactive editorial opportunities, we haven't got 2 or 3 hours on the morning of kind of doing that outreach to build these really in-depth prospecting lists. So instead, we set up a master media list that has all of our key contacts for that brand and at those specific publications that we can go to very quickly. Our evaluation template then, as I went over on the success matrix side of things, we also make sure that as a document, we have this ready to go for every single quarterly review meeting. Again, we plot success versus not successful and complex versus not complex. In terms of tools we use for this newsroom then, we have BuzzSumo, Moz, of course, and then some more traditional PR tools as well, like #journo requests, where you will see on Twitter journalists asking for data, content, spokespeople in the here and now. Those opportunities give way for you to jump on very, very quickly for brands. It's journalists telling you they need things. Go and give it to them. Now, you can find all of these resources. I have set up a ton of documents for you so that you can go back at the end of this week into your offices and set this newsroom up yourselves. If you go to era.net/Mozcon19, you will find everything you possibly need in there. So finally, people then. You need to define clear roles and responsibilities in this newsroom. So back at Era, we have storytellers and story makers. This team here is split into people that tell the stories, so they're on the front line of the press, going and speaking to those journalists, making sure that they're pitching the right content at the right time in the right way. And we also have the story producers. So they're the guys that go out and make things, our designers, our developers, our content strategists. And this is what the team structure looks like then. You can see the team is clearly split into two different functions to make sure that everyone is accountable and knows exactly what they should be doing to make this newsroom a success. You're probably thinking, I haven't got a team of 15. How do I do this and make it work? Well, actually, it worked really well in 2017 when Era's content team was just myself and one other. So we had Laura as our content specialist, and then myself as our digital PR specialist. And again, you can see the roles defined as storytellers and story makers. You can even implement this newsroom as one person. If you are a storytelling and a creative unicorn, please come and speak to me. You are a rare breed. If you can make stories and tell them, I would love to meet you, and potentially we can talk about working together in the future. So in summary then, link building is incredibly unpredictable. I don't have to tell you guys that at all. But as a team and an agency, combining the disciplines of traditional PR and SEO, we have worked out a way of delivering consistent link building results for our clients. We can no longer rely on these hero-planned editorial campaigns any longer. Instead, we need to be tapping in and creating campaigns and doing outreach that ties into all three sections of journalist writing. We need to be more Meghan Markle and less Prince Charles. So success is not going to happen overnight, but I can promise you that it will happen over time. And you will be able to, once established this newsroom and get it up on its feet, secure top-tier links from sites just like this. This, guys, is how we should be doing link building in 2019. Thank you so much for having me.